Welcome back, Tributes, to episode 44 of Into the Arena. I'm Holly,
And I'm Emily.
and we have a fun episode for you, like always. But before we jump in, we do have some announcements. Join us tomorrow on Monday, if you're listening to this on Sunday, for our Mockingjay Monday read along. We've just started. You can still jump in, join us, and it's always a blast with our friends. And then join us on September 1st. It's a Thursday for a watch along. We are going to be doing a fun Twilight watch along because, as you all know, Emily and I met through the Twilight fandom. We're going to Forks the week after, and it's kind of fun to just hate on Twilight a little bit. So come hate on Twilight with us.
We're not going to be hating on Twilight.
We'll be loving it while all our
Actually.
friends are hating on it.
Spoiler.
So. Yeah, so join us for the watch along on September 1st, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern time. Yeah, I guess that's all for our announcements. We can dive right in. You've read the title as normal. Today's episode is about the careers. So we love them, we're scared of them, we hate them, all of the emotions.
The first thing we should maybe talk about is just establishing who the careers are. I
Yes.
went back into the book and I was reading like different parts relating to the careers in the Hunger Games. And I guess I just didn't really think about the fact that the careers, like that's a District 12 term. We don't even know if that's a term that's used by other districts. Katniss is something like, oh, in District 12, we call them the careers.
That's fair. Yeah, good point.
I don't know, maybe other districts call them different things, but
Yeah.
it's kind of a funny term, career tributes, like they're doing it as their occupation.
They commit their whole lives towards it.
It makes me think, okay, well, what are the careers who don't actually get picked end up doing? Like, they volunteer and then
Oh,
in District 2, they would go to being a peacekeeper.
yeah.
That would make sense. But then it's like, oh, you trained whatever your whole life up until you're 17, 18 years old in District 1, and then you got to work in like the jewelry factory or
Yeah. Well, I'm
something.
just thinking it compares to the guy that you went to high school with who trained his whole life to be a football player, maybe played college and then didn't get drafted. So he's got to get a real job.
That's a good analogy, Holly. In the books, Katniss mentions that districts 1, 2, and 4 generally have the look of careers about them. Whereas then in the movies, they really only focused on District 1 and District 2 and not District 4 at all as being part of the career pack. Whereas in the book, District 4 is with them, right?
In the book, yeah.
Yeah, I focus on the movies so much. Like, that's what I rewatch instead of rereading. We just reread The Hunger Games, though, so I should know.
No, it's okay. Because it's like the lost deaths. For example, like Glimmer dies with the District 4 girl. Like, you just don't think about it because, like, in the movie,
it just focuses on Glimmer.
Yeah. Another interesting thing, I'm rereading or re-listening to Ballad right now, and I know that they're not careers or referred to as careers, but District 11 is grouped in with the careers that Coriolanus refers to, because they say that the more athletic types also come from District 11. So that was something that I thought interesting.
I mean, I guess it's just based on the type of work that they do in District 11. Maybe even though they're not considered careers by District 12 and Katniss, maybe sometimes District 11 does join the career pack.
And I mean, it's also noted that it could be anyone who joins with them. But yeah, it was weird how I forgot at the beginning of time you could have District 11 be in on the careers. So
maybe outside of that kind of career pack, they're the next most likely district to win if one of the career pack doesn't. Yeah. But I mean, in the Hunger Games, I mean, I guess it's because Thresh is so big, but they try to recruit him to be a career. So maybe that happens like more frequently than we even see in the 74th games.
Yeah.
District 1, 2, sometimes 4, and occasionally 11.
And then let's just add all the rest of them in. That's fine.
Not 12 is the answer.
Exactly. That's a good point. Yeah, but I hadn't even thought about it. I completely forgot how the career was just a District 12 term. So that's very interesting. The next important part of this discussion is, who's your favorite career?
I feel like this is kind of obvious from our last episode, which was our
Mhm.
favorite scenes from the Hunger Games. You had on your list the like feast scene, which
Mhm.
Clove is prominent in that scene, and that was like my sixth if I could have had six instead of a
Mhm.
top five. So in the movies, I would say Clove, especially for that scene specifically. She's so good in the role. She embodies Clove so much. She tones it down a little bit. And
Mhm.
I think that helps to make Clove more likable in the film.
Yeah.
In the book, I would say Cato would be, if I have to pick someone, because honestly, I was rereading parts in the book and I just don't really care about the careers.
Yeah. You
The
care about them
same
more
way.
seeing them in the movies, I
Mhm.
feel like.
Yeah.
So
I think
answer.
I'd pick Cato in the books because he stands out more, I think, than Clove
Mhm.
as like this big adversary that Katniss is gonna have to go against. And in the movie, to me, except for the very end when Katniss and Peeta have to go up against Cato, it really feels like the adversary is Clove.
But I guess also in the movie, he is kind of like a final boss. I don't
Yeah,
know.
but, like, I was more scared about Katniss
And the
facing
feast.
Clove,
Yeah.
yeah, than
Hmm.
at the end, and then Peeta's there with her also, so, going up against him, like, kind of as a team. I
Hmm.
don't know, it's more scary facing
That's,
Clove in
yeah.
the film, I think.
Yeah. Clove is awesome. So that was exactly what my answer was. And we ended up asking you all the same question. And by a crazy amount, it was Clove. Everyone loves Clove.
Clear winner. I think it was like over 60% of the
Yeah.
votes, followed closely by Cato, and then a really small portion of people said Marvel and Glimmer, and
Mhm.
those two, the votes for those two were very close. Yeah, not a lot of love for Marvel or Glimmer.
Yeah. What about the 75th? Do you have a favorite or anyone that stands out? Because I feel like it's harder for the Quarter Quell. Nobody really stands out to me
I
besides
mean,
Anabaria who
and
lives,
Obaria, I
but
feel like is the only one who stands out. So I'm not
mhm.
sure if I could pick a favorite other than we end up seeing more of an Obaria and she makes it to the end and she has some standout lines, I
Yeah.
guess.
See, I always thought it was interesting with Kashmir and Gloss how they were siblings, which we'll get
Yeah, true.
into district life and how people volunteer and how it works. But I just think that's something interesting to think about is their backstory and how they got into the games and how as siblings they both were able to participate. And then I guess we could answer our favorite career moment from the books and movies. Mine would be the feast with
think
Clove.
I think it's
Like,
gonna be the feast.
yeah, I can't really think why I would choose another one. It's a moment that I enjoyed a lot from Alexander was when there's that like moment where he realizes that the capital
Mm,
is evil and is bad. Like he did such an amazing job just like representing just for like a split second, like those
yeah.
few lines, how awful the capital is and how in the end it's not about the games, it's about him killing for Snow. And I just always get chills when I see that scene. It makes me feel so sad. So that's like an honorable mention scene as well
Yeah.
for me.
My honorable mention, I guess, runner up would be when they're chasing Katniss and she goes up the tree and it's just a hilarious scene when they're
Yeah.
like taunting her. Like it shouldn't be funny, but they're like,
Mhm.
kill her, Kato, kill her, get her, Kato.
And no
Love
one can
Clove.
get her. It takes like what, there's four in the movie and how many in the book there, so they can't get her.
Yeah. They really
Yeah.
don't seem that intimidating except for Clove, to be honest.
Yeah. Throw the sword.
I was reading the feast scene in the book before this episode, and I loved how Clove like opened up her jacket, like with all the knives
Yes.
inside, and then she picks like a really
Oh,
tiny knife out to like she's vicious in that scene. It is like
Mhm.
scary. She's like, I'm gonna cut your lips off and like blow one
Yes.
last kiss to Loverboy.
It's like, and also she just seems younger. I don't know. At least in the movie compared to Kato, she seems younger, and like the fact that she comes off so insanely intimidating is even scarier. Like you said, it's a little scarier than just big buff boy. It's like this killer little girl. Like it's just freaky. I do not like it.
Yeah, I mean, she's good at that.
So
Isabel
Clove
Furman.
wins honorary best career.
I haven't
Mhm.
seen Orphan, and then now there's like the sequel or prequel coming out. I'm like, I
Yeah.
kind of want to watch it just to see Isabel Furman in it, and
Yeah.
whatever new movie she has with Josh,
Yeah.
which I don't really know what that's all about, but
I don't know either.
I'm gonna watch it because that's interesting.
With two of them, like what? A reunion. Now we have kind of like a deeper question. Do we think the careers are bad?
I feel like obviously the answer we're both gonna give here is no,
Yeah. We're like
but
agree.
it's interesting you brought up the ending scene in the movie with Kato. One thing that I like about that scene is that he's like, "Nah, nah.
Not
I
I.
can still do this. Like, I can still do that." Like, he's not to the point where he's totally, like, against killing now, or it's like, "Oh,
Mhm.
I'm like a good person, and I'm not gonna kill any of the tributes," but, like, his final act, he's still gonna do what the Capitol brainwashed him to do.
That's true.
Um,
Yeah.
so I don't know, that's interesting that he doesn't, like, flip all the way. I mean, it's more realistic, I
Mhm.
think. I don't know, I mean, I guess they don't really know the difference between right and wrong. How could you in
Mhm.
that situation and, like, the way that it seems that that district is run?
For me, I think that part is interesting too, because you bring up the point like he could just be sad about losing. I don't know. Like in the end, it could be him reflecting on the fact that like he's trained and worked so hard. This is
And,
his
like, fell
literal
short.
career.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he didn't make it. That makes me sometimes I question if that look is what that actually means, or it could be a mix of both. But I just know that I have a hard time watching that because it is really sad. And I mean, for 18 years, they're raised to believe that that's the right thing that they're doing, and they're completely brainwashed. But the careers that I do have a problem with are the adult careers that volunteer for the Court of Quell,
Mm.
because then I question like, did they ever get the memo? Like, did they ever actually learn from their experiences?
I mean, it seems like the careers in Catching Fire are, I mean, they're part of the group during the interviews that like they're upset and they're
Mhm.
opposed to going in again. At least District 1.
Yeah.
We don't see anything from District 2, but it seems like Kashmir and Gloss are trying to, like, stop the games with
Mhm.
everybody else. So, it seems like maybe they've kind of come to somewhat of a realization that it's, like, not something that they wanna be a part of,
Yeah.
but I'm not so sure about Brutus and Obaria.
Because then it gets complicated because if the raping is similar to other rapings in the past, which we don't know, like if they, I mean, we assume they allow volunteers for districts 1 and 2 for the Quell, but
Right.
like, why would you be volunteering to go if you know that that's something that you don't want to be a part of? Or say if they didn't allow it, then they just picked two people who happen to be, I mean, it could be rigged, but happen to be against the games. And then it also goes on to say, like, we don't know how mentoring works when you have multiple mentors or victors. Like, do they, how do they interact with their tributes and say, like, hey, man, this is really screwed up, actually. Like, we shouldn't be doing this.
I feel
So,
like for the Quarter Quell for District 1, it must have been rigged so that they could get Kashmir and Gloss, a brother and sister.
yeah.
Like, that just makes sense to I guess it could have been random too, because there is a very small pool of tributes to choose from, but District 1 and District 2 would have had the most. And I think as a capital citizen, like seeing a brother and sister in the games that have both won would be super interesting.
Hmm.
So I can see how it would be rigged, but then like nobody volunteered. I don't know. I want to
Yeah,
know if they like volunteered or not.
it just gets confusing in that way. Like, I mean, each individual career can have their own thoughts and experiences and realizations. But it also, I think that's when I got really confused was when we got Kashmir Gloss and Abaria and Brutus, because then it made
Does
me
the book
question a
say
lot.
whether they volunteered or not?
That's a good question.
I'm gonna look.
Pull up your Kindle.
Got it. It's so handy.
There we go.
What are we gonna look up? Volunteer in Catching Fire. Mags volunteers and Brutus volunteers. Brutus, a volunteer from District 2 who must be at least 40 and apparently can't wait to get back in the arena. It doesn't say that Kashmir or Gloss volunteered, even though she mentions them, the brother and sister. And it doesn't say that Enobaria volunteered. So Brutus is the only one who specifically mentioned to volunteer again.
Yeah, I guess that'd be my question for Suzanne Collins would be I'd like to know, did the other ones volunteer?
I feel like I'm leaning into my theory that it was rigged and maybe in District 1 nobody wanted to volunteer. I don't know. And they just picked the brother and sister because that's cool. And
Yeah.
then Anobaria must have volunteered because if Brutus volunteered, then there had to be female tributes that would have volunteered too.
It just gets confusing.
Love how Suzanne was like, Katniss is just like, oh yeah, the volunteering, it's just real complicated in other
Yeah.
districts. She doesn't know, so we don't get to know.
Which I guess is a good question. How do you think the volunteering works in the career districts?
This doesn't exactly answer the question, but I feel like in districts 1 and 2, where there's citizens who are a lot more well off, the volunteering system and training the tributes has to be a kind of system that's put in place and promoted by the most wealthy people so that
Mhm.
their families, like and their kids, escape the reaping. So like if they have this propaganda that you can train and like you should volunteer
Mm.
to be a tribute, then that spares like their family and like their
Interesting.
kids from having to be picked because someone's always going to volunteer. So I feel like
Mhm.
it might be for the lower class in those
Interesting.
districts as a way to kind of get out of their lower standing. Just something I was thinking about today.
No, I could definitely see that because when I was thinking about this question, I was thinking about how there's definitely like it's definitely rigged. Like there's no way that it's not rigged if it's rigged in other districts. Your reason kind of put pieces of my thoughts together. So that's like a really good way to put it.
It's like I'm thinking about Sejanus's family.
Mhm.
Like, yeah, they ended up getting to the capital, but I feel like maybe other families like his that didn't get out,
Mhm.
they kind of came up with the idea to like, oh, like maybe we'll promote it as this really
Mhm.
honorable thing to do so that like we can't make it to the capital, but
It would make sense too because it distracts like a big majority towards doing that, hence why most of them come out as careers. My theory is that the way that the reaping works is you have your grand pool of people that you're picking from who have been training for years and they're the best in their class training wise. So say you and I are in a training class and you rank number one and I rank number two for fighting because they're like they go to class and that's what they get like after school or something. I don't know. They like we talked about this. But
mhm.
like instead of the volleyball team, there's like the the knives throwing team. And from there, then it's almost like divergent, like the top 20 students or whatever get to have an opportunity at volunteering at the reaping. I don't know. I feel like it comes down to number one student for girls and boys.
To me, I don't think it's that formalized. That's just like
Really?
not how I envision it. But maybe because how else would they who would train them? Well, like in District 2, I mean, that's where the peacekeeper training is. Like that's where
Mhm.
most of the peacekeepers are. So I guess how early do they start training to be peacekeepers? Maybe it's just capital instruction.
It's just like an athletic thing too. Like if you're raised to be very athletic, then they just have that competitive drive and they're already like super in shape, super raised. I don't know. Think of somebody
Like
who's
maybe some of them have parents that are peacekeepers, and so like that's where they
Mhm.
learn things from.
See, I could
I
just
don't
see it
know.
being more like capital standard because then the capital wants districts 1 and 2 to win because they give them a better show each year. And
True.
so you don't want the careers to go away. What do you think they call the careers in the capital? Like they're obviously a group, like a clique. That's the
Yeah, I don't
question I want to
know.
hear from people is like, what do you think if District 12 calls the careers, what does the capital call? Like the pre-victors, the lil victors, because they're on their way to win.
We can circle back
Like
to that.
Team Rocket or something.
Team Rocket. Like
Uh,
rocket power.
I think that's a good question. How do we think life is different in the career districts? I guess we kind of talked about it, but I mean, being like a 12 to 18-year-old in District 1 and 2, what does your day look like? Do we reflect on my high school Hunger Games fan fiction or do we take
Oh
it
my
seriously?
gosh. We start with Glimmer calling Kato on the phone.
I think they do the academy thing. Because if the Capitol has a really cool academy during Snow's age, imagine decades down the line, districts 1 and 2 having something similar, but it's more physically driven. Like, yes, they do learn, but it's more combat and training them to be peacekeepers.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I'm imagining is we know that there's a class division in District 12, but I just can almost imagine it being even more of a wide spectrum in District 1 and District 2
Mhm.
than in District 12. And I
Yeah.
feel like that just really fuels the volunteering and
Yeah.
the training in my eyes.
It would make sense as to why it's so pushed there too, and why they would have access to so much if the Capitol doesn't know about it.
I just really wish, I mean, I love Ballad and I like how it is, but it would have
Mhm.
been really cool, if anything, to see instead of District 12 for Snow to go to District 2.
Mhm.
I think that would have been more interesting.
Yeah.
Like maybe Lucy Gray could have been from District 2, you know? I don't know.
Surprise.
Like she could have written the hanging tree there and it still could have gotten over to District 12.
Mhm. This is off topic, but re-listening to the audiobook, I have a theory that she's from the Capitol.
Huh.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh. This is for another episode,
I
Holly.
know. I just let me just sprinkle a theory in here. After hearing some little points, I'm kind of like, I
Hmm.
think she could be from the
All right,
Capitol.
all right. We're gonna tease that for another episode because I definitely
Come
want to get
back.
into that and dissect that theory because wow,
Yeah.
that's a good one.
Anyway.
I had asked a question about volunteering and how you guys thought that worked in the career districts. So let me see if I can find some good ones. Jerry, HG underscore fanboy, said, I think that the career tributes do some sort of challenge near the end of their school year, which determines which tributes volunteer. And that's kind of like what you were saying, like top of their class, but like their final project or something. Right, this is gonna determine who gets to volunteer for the Hunger Games.
Or to graduate. It's like your graduation requirement is that you compete and then they have like the top ones go to the games.
Mel said I feel like they draw from the volunteers ahead of time. That's interesting.
Yeah, because if you think about how confusing it could get if you have however many kids wanting to volunteer, you have to settle it somewhere.
Belle of the Books said the victors who help train the kids get to pick which ones will volunteer. I like that theory. There's just so much we don't know.
Yeah.
Libby Love said, I think they only pick from a pool of volunteers. That makes sense. Chase was saying it's like whoever volunteers first, and it's confusing because everybody's all screaming that they volunteer at the same time. And it's just so complicated because they have to figure out who said it first.
How would that
I don't
even
think it's gonna
work?
work. It would work like that because how would they even figure out who would say it first? I feel like everybody volunteers who wants to volunteer, and then maybe they do a reaping of all the names of the people who volunteer. It's either got to be that, like they do a second reaping of the volunteers, or only one person volunteers because it's widespread knowledge that only one person volunteers, and we all know who the person is who's going to volunteer.
And I like how just from Ballad and us knowing for sure that reapings are rigged, everyone in the, like 90% of people in these comments are like, it's rigged, it's rigged. Somebody, it's this, it's this. I'm like, yeah, it's true. Everything's rigged. Maya's reading adventure says maybe they pre-select the candidates before the actual reaping based on skills. So they know what the arena looks like. So they're going to pick somebody who knows how to swim really well, or they know that
that's a
they're
good
gonna have
point.
this, you know what I mean? So they could select based
like,
on all the kids
really,
who have
really
skills.
rigged.
Yeah. They really want a winner.
Depending on what the head game maker really wants to happen in that arena, they could definitely put all that together to know that someone is most likely going to win from District 2 or District 1. Somebody said dance off.
Yes, it's like High School Musical.
That's nice.
It's the baseball scene.
That's like most of the submissions, but thanks everybody who contributed.
We love to hear your thoughts instead of us just going back and forth. What do we wish Suzanne would tell us more about the careers? The careers take up so much of what we know about the Hunger Games, but we really know nothing about the careers.
Kind of thinking about what my theory was, I sort of want to understand more about how the career pack and the volunteering system was put into place.
Yeah.
I think that would be really interesting, which is kind of why I would have liked Snow to be sent to District 2, because maybe we could have seen the start of that in some way.
Yeah, maybe she's like, I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
I mean, probably. There's probably a lot of things that she's just never really thought through unless she was going to write a book about it or it was important to the plot.
It's important to us, like every other piece of information. One of my questions is similar. I said, when did potential academies open up? If this is true, when did they start? Did they start post 10th games, I would assume?
Nobody volunteered for the 10th games.
They run away. They're like, time to go.
Getting out of here.
Rest in peace, Marcus. But they're ready to go. And then my other question would be like, what happened to District 11 not being a part of the careers? Because I know it has to do with wealth and status, but District 11 is the biggest district population and size wise.
Going back to like my theory, I feel like District 11 is all extremely poor, sort of like District 12. Like there's nobody that, maybe even more so. I kind of feel like their lack of wealth is on a much more even playing field in District 11. I don't know. That's just how I imagine it, that they're all really kind of low level laborers in District 11. So I feel like that same mentality of volunteering or like pushing people to volunteer wouldn't have developed.
Yeah.
Like in District 2 or District 1.
It's just interesting to me in Ballad to hear how different families and districts work together. At one point, the book talks about District 7 and tourism, like how different higher up families in the capital have these relationships with districts. And you think that would maybe like reflect more in the games like it does potentially in District 2, but that's just another level of confusion.
Like Snow's not having anybody in District 13.
You're just like, coin?
It's like, well, I'm just gonna be president then.
Yeah. Screw you. Yeah. So I mean that's another question I'd be interested in. Besides, tell me everything ever about the careers and how does this work? And is there an academy? So I mean, besides that, do you have any other final thoughts about the careers?
I wouldn't want to fight him. That's for sure.
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
Why do I feel like Katniss is a career in the first movie? Like I watch it and I'm just like, Katniss is clearly taking everyone down like in this group.
How did Peeta from the stupid training scene become a career?
That is a question that I want the answer to.
Like how did that even
He's a
work?
wordsmith, so you know he convinced them.
Yeah. It's like after that sad sack of flour throwing.
That is the careers.
Yeah, it concludes our episode of the careers. Let us know what you think the Capitol calls the careers. I'm very interested. I'll post a poll if you listen on Spotify. I think you can answer on there and potentially Apple Music. So we do read your responses. Join us for Mockingjay Monday and come watch Twilight with us on September 1st at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. See you in 2 weeks for another amazing episode we're super excited for.
Mhm.
Bye.